Welcome to the Real Expats of Panama, a segment of the Panama podcast, where we cut through the noise and bring you the real scoop on what life in Panama is actually like. Welcome to the Panama podcast, from dreaming to doing. I'm your host, Melissa Darnay. If you want insider tips on living, investing, and having a blast in Panama, go to choosepanama.com and snag your free copy of Panama Uncorked. Joining me are two powerhouse co-hosts who know Panama inside and out. Stacy Jenks is our vacation property management expert. She keeps rentals running like a well-oiled machine. Amanda Gleason is a turnkey decorator who transforms empty spaces into stunning move-in ready homes. I'm your host, Melissa Darnay, a real estate broker in Panama who focuses 100% on English-speaking expats just like you. Stacy and I are Americans, and Amanda is from the land down under, as you'll be able to tell from her broad Aussie accent. Together, we've seen it all, the good, the bad, and the unexpected. So don't believe everything you read online. We're here to give you the unfiltered truth, because when it comes to living in Panama, what you don't know could cost you. Our topic today is, what is it like to live in an apartment building in Panama? We are joined by a special guest, Tammy Shackley, an American who spends about half time in Panama and half time in Florida. Ladies, before we dive in, I want to tell you my motivation for choosing this topic. One of the very first videos I posted on the Choose Panama YouTube channel back in 2015, a decade ago, was a video on this topic.
They had TV then?
They had TV.
They had internet?
And looking back, it's a horrible it's a horrible video. There's nothing good about it. It looks like your 2-year-old filmed it. The production quality is horrible. I look like a melon, round face, horrible. But I wanted to get an update to this question. Tammy, since you're our guest, let's start with you. But before we do, we have to have a welcoming cheers. So welcome to the podcast.
Welcome,
Tammy.
Salute, as they say in Panama.
Eye contact, everyone, eye contact.
For good luck.
And a sip.
Cheers.
You can't do cheers without a sip.
It's true. It's true.
Delicious.
Now, Tammy, you're from Oklahoma, Texas, and now Florida. Had you ever lived in an apartment before?
Didn't we all live in an apartment when we were paying our way through college?
Okay, yes. So post-college, had you lived in an apartment?
I did live in what was called a high-rise condo in Amarillo, Texas, which meant 10 floors.
I was going to say Amarillo.
There's only one, and I lived in it. And so I remember condo living. I remember really connecting with your neighbors, checking on the elders. If someone new, young, a grandkid was visiting, you're like, hey, who's that? So I remember condo living, but it was a luxury living experience, even then in my late 20s.
Oh, so you did it. So I have not lived in an apartment since college. So I had no experience as an adult, because when you're in college, you're not really an adult yet.
I think for most of my life, after I left home, I've lived in a condo, an apartment, or there was one where I lived in a townhouse, a duplex.
See, I have not. I've lived in houses except for my early 20s. We lived in, cheap apartments, early married, baby early. So they weren't very nice. So I didn't have a good experience or a good memory of living in apartments or condos.
And I think where people are from, so if you're from New York, everyone lives in an apartment.
Right.
Everyone has that preconceived notion of what it's like to live in an apartment. And when I get clients down here, I can see on their faces, oh, you're going to take me to an apartment? Ooh, I don't know about that. So a lot of times I'll use the word interchangeably condo. Because if you're not from New York or Paris or Chicago, it has a better sound to it.
And let me tell you, the first thing you see when you walk in, like here at Casa Bonita, is the view.
The view.
Would have been completely different. I did have a completely different opinion once I saw it. So, than what I had in my mind.
For me, they had me at no gardening.
Yes. No yard work.
She said no gardening for those people who don't speak Aussie.
Yeah,
Amanda doesn't mop and she doesn't garden.
I don't mop and I don't garden. I have a black thumb. I will kill the nature. So,
well, I refer to it as when you wake up in the morning and you fix your coffee, or your husband does. Let's be honest. Do you want to look at your lawn, or do you want to see the jungle? and the ocean and hear the birds.
Right.
And so, as you know, of this high-rise, and I say condo, we're on the lowest level, which I feel like is a treehouse.
Right.
So we hear the parakeets. We've named our parrots Edith and Archie because they scream in the morning. And
That's funny. She has
nice to
she
wake
has
up to.
birds that she's named
Yes,
as well.
we name our birds. And the hawk, that's really kind of a bully. But what I love is, even on the lowest level, we have a treehouse experience. On the highest level, you have the most amazing views.
Right.
So we all, it's not the grass is greener. It's go visit your neighbor and see the other view.
Exactly. And also, I think when I thought of apartments, again, you're thinking of the lowest common denominator. But here there are so many amenities.
Right.
And not only the view, but the amenities. I mean, you could spend all day between going to the gym, the sauna, the pools.
Isn't the Nuovo has a salt room?
Right.
A salt room, and they have one of those pools that you swim against.
Right. What are those called? The where it's a
Resistance
small
pools?
The resistance
Resistance
pools. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have the cold plunge too, and cold plunge is very trendy.
Trendy for sure.
Not just for athletes anymore. It's for everyone from Joe Rogan and on who does the cold plunge. Well, that's already built into our spa. It's already been there
That's
for
right.
10 years or however long. So to me, you don't have to enjoy everything all at once. You can kind of rotate.
Right.
What are you into right now? The steam room, the sauna, the cold plunge, or just laying out in the sun.
Right.
You don't have to do everything always. Whatever feels good right now.
Right.
Well, and I think another really nice benefit is like, if you want to do yoga, you don't have to get in your car and drive somewhere to go to yoga class. You can do it upstairs on the rooftop.
Right.
Or, water aerobics. It's just so easy.
I just
So
like being able
convenient.
to look at the ocean. It doesn't mean I actually want to go out in the sun and get burned and
Right.
go
Right.
in the ocean. I just
I
love looking
wear
at
100 proof when I go.
it. I feel
I
it,
love to
Stacey. I
see
feel
it,
you.
yes.
I gotcha. But
So one of the things we asked the team, we have an amazing team that takes care of everything here. And I said, always make sure there's 2 loungers in the shade for the people that like to read in the middle of the day.
Right.
And then reading leads to the nap, but you don't want to get burned. So we always have 2 chairs backed up in the shade, always, to accommodate everyone, whether they're sun sensitive or they're aging or whatever. We call this place Lock and Walk, that we can lock it, go to our other home in Florida, and we don't worry about anything. We're in a gated community there. It's a gated village here. It's a concierge desk here. So it's lock and walk. It's safety. You go back and forth. And it's a lot of freedom.
And I think one thing that I had not, like one of my preconceived notions is that who's going to be doing what? Who's going to be doing the upkeep? When you have a professionally managed property, there's a dozen people taking care of everything from, who's paying their monthly dues to, cleaning every single day, including holidays and Sundays and Christmas. So it's nice to have that level of people just taking care of everything so you never have to think about it.
And they're so helpful. If I was at home and pulled in the garage and if my husband wasn't there and I had a 50-pound bag I had to carry in, it would be you. It would be me trying to figure out how to get that thing in. Here they come right to your car and they're just so willing to help and so nice. And it's wonderful.
It's really, the new luxury experience is we send away our dry cleaning here. And it's very affordable. And then when they return it to the front desk, they may call us and say, oh, your dry cleaning has arrived. And we say, yeah, yes, we'll be done in a minute. And they bring it up. At first I'm embarrassed and then I feel so honored, like, oh. And of course we tip and thank them because they didn't have to do that.
Right.
But they know us. They know the neighbors here. And if somebody has a free minute and they can deliver your dry cleaning to your door, it sounds silly, but it's not getting in your car. It's not facing traffic. It's not going into town. It's personal service all the time.
It's
Right.
more you time you get.
Yeah.
So, Stacey, what were your preconceived notions about living in an apartment building before you moved here?
Like I said, I had bad memories, so I was very weary about doing it. But then, of course, we came and I saw the place here and just fell in love with it. It was amazing. Completely changed my mind, my forethought.
Amanda, how about you?
I mean, I'd always lived in apartment buildings, but for me, it is a step up because I lived in a place that I used to call the dungeon. So
And with all this light, it's certainly not the dungeon.
But look, I mean, I've lived in a few different buildings at the beaches and here in the city, and I do have to say that it is you do get used to having staff on site. I've been in different buildings where the staff aren't quite as accommodating. It's not so much of a concierge service as you guys have got in Casa Bonita. And the staff can make or break a place if you've got a good crew of people there.
So when I first moved to Panama, my apartment here that I bought wasn't ready. So I lived in the city and I rented an apartment.
Yeah.
And it was right on the water. It was lovely. And I rented it for about 3 months. I never went back again. And about a decade later, somebody I knew was living in that building. So I went back and I saw the security guard, one of the same security guards that had been there when I was living there. And I said to him, I was like, oh, I used to live in the building, but I was on the 15th floor, but I can't remember which apartment. And he's like, you were in 15D.
You're kidding me.
No, a decade later, he remembered which apartment I was in. Because that's their whole life, is remembering which people are in which apartments.
Yeah.
And because he had been there, and I was like, wow, that's a level of service you're just not used to.
You know, we have neighbors too, and I know you know, that own multiple apartments. Maybe this is their weekend home.
Right.
And then they maybe also own a place in Panama Pacifico as a rental, revenue generating. And then they work and live in Costa del Este during the week. And what's interesting, and I hear these neighbors compare.
And I just want to say, Costa del Este is through the city, so it's about 25 minutes from where we are, but it's still Panama City.
With good traffic, right. And so what's interesting is they refer to this building as the cleanest building. And they say, oh, the lobby's so clean and everything's shining. And at first you think, oh, well, of course. But then after years of living here, you really take pride in the cleanliness of every building that you're touring. What makes a difference? In this building, I think you have two decisions to make when you tour. Do you want to see the sunrise or the sunset?
Right.
Other than that, every floor's
And they're both
great view.
And they're both great. So the three of us live in the same building, and then she's the
I'm in the
odd one
city.
out
Yeah.
living in the city.
You're so metro.
I love the city. I love the city.
So when she first moved into that apartment, she would text and say, oh my gosh, coffee is 27 steps from my lobby.
I'd moved from Nueva Gorgona,
Which is on the
lovely, but
beaches
it's
area.
on the beach, totally different. Like there's nothing in walking distance. And I'm a Sydney girl. I am used to metro life. So to be able to just walk and have cafes and salons was good.
It's an urban living experience.
Yeah.
And
But now I get to have the best of both worlds because I've still got friends living in this building.
we notice you visit a lot. I know.
And I think one of the other things I was really shocked by is in my head back from when I was in college living in cheap apartments, you could hear everything. Next door, below you, above you, beside you. There was just always this level of noise. And in Panama, because they build with concrete, you hear nothing. The only time you hear anything, there's noise leakage through the front door. So when someone goes by your door, that's the only thing you hear. But other than that, you hear nothing.
So much so that when I'm ready for my coffee, and if the door is closed between the master and the living room, I will yell, is there coffee? And he can't hear me. If the door is closed.
Are you sure that's because of the door?
No,
or is that selective hearing?
You need to set up like a ding dong bell next to the bed that you just go ding, and it sets off an alarm in the kitchen.
This is what a princess I am. I will call him on the phone. Is there coffee? And he said, I couldn't hear that you were up. And when we were looking here, we looked in all of the areas that you talked about. The Coronado, the Gorgona, so many expats and Canadians, Americans. I mean, it was we spent 11 days staying in different condos every night. Wow. And you know who helped organize that for us. And it was wonderful, your friend. And
your
it was
friend.
Your friend. And so it was a wonderful experience. The like sunset and how dark and quiet it may be, but the beach. And then this was the last place we stayed on the last day. And then your colleague talked us into visiting the model unit at sunset, on the sunset side.
With a cocktail.
With a glass of wine. And we walked in, sat down, was watching the sunset, and said, let's buy this. Let's buy this.
Now my mom wants to buy your apartment.
I
She
know.
keeps talking about it. Like, I don't think they're moving. You're out of luck.
I quit showing it to people because we're not leaving. We're not leaving. It really is coming here and experiencing. Because for some people, it really is what we call the interior of Panama.
Right.
That if that's the stage of life you're in, but I still work full time. So I needed reliable internet, access to the city, picking up friends at the airport. So there's pluses and minuses, whether you're in the interior, what we call the interior, closer to the beach or near the city, for sure.
What I find with a lot of my clients, they're moving here. So if they're coming from the big house and they're thinking about the amount of stuff they're used to having, for them they're freaking out about how am I gonna live with less?
I was so glad to get rid of all our. I was so happy to downsize.
Yeah.
And I think this is very location specific to where people are coming from. Because again, if they're coming from New York or Paris or Boston or something like that, they're like, 1,000 square feet, amazing.
Luxury.
And if they're coming from Dallas from a 5,000 square foot house, they're like, oh,
What am I gonna do with all this?
3,000 square foot condo, I don't know.
No,
That's
I
too
was like, get
small.
rid of it. It's not going. Get rid of it.
You really do. We've been through 3 downsizes by design, by choice. And finally, when you get to the final stage of however you downsize, you really don't miss the stuff.
No.
And you can have a storage unit here in the building. And we don't even have a storage unit. We don't have a Christmas tree. We go to neighbors' parties for Christmas, but we do host Thanksgiving. So to have the dishes and the glassware. So the things, whatever you didn't keep or don't want to store, your neighbor has it. And you can borrow and you can switch off and you can, it's been lovely.
Or just invite yourself over.
Or when
Well, we do that too.
a great social aspect is, we have ladies' nights or we have social area, social time on Fridays and so forth. You don't have to drive.
Yeah.
Right.
You just have to find the right elevator.
Exactly.
Just the right elevator.
You never worry about drinking and driving here because you're just using your finger in the elevator.
No, when you take a tray or something somewhere to somebody, with food, you can just leave it. Hey, they know where you live.
Right.
They'll just walk it over.
You'll come out the next day and it's there.
And it's there.
That's how the door is washed, clean, return. It's amazing.
Literally, we left our temporary music speaker on the pickleball court this morning, and they delivered it to the front desk. And the front desk called and said, your speaker is here. And selfishly, I thought, well, if I wait 5 minutes, maybe they'll bring it up. But they didn't. And so we went down. But that's how neighborly everybody is.
Right.
The person said, oh, you left your speaker, because we do play music during pickleball.
Now, and a lot of people think that these buildings are just full of like Americans and Canadians. Oh. And even though 3/4 of us here are Americans, that's not really the makeup of the building.
They're definitely not Australians, though. There's not many of us.
There's not many
not many.
Australians.
Yeah.
2.
There's 2, maybe 3.
So when we were hosting what we called American Happy Hour 8 years ago, when we moved here, so many of our neighbors didn't know what a traditional American Happy Hour was. Friday at 5:00, you get together, have some nuts, pretzels, and a beverage. And what was interesting is a couple
Beverage,
of
cheers.
a beverage. Salute. A couple of weeks in, we had in our apartment alone 16 countries and 9 languages present.
Wow.
In our apartment.
Wow.
Salute.
Yeah.
Well, Tammy, just a few weeks ago, you had a ladies' night.
Yeah.
And goodness, we had Germans, Russians, Brazilians, Americans.
Peru. The one daughter was from living in Peru. And then Californians. You got to throw in a Californian every now and again.
And it was only a group of, 10 ladies?
Yeah.
Maybe a few more.
No, right.
But so many different nationalities.
It
was
was
crazy.
Because when your family visits or your friends visit, the neighbors want to meet them.
right.
You want to meet someone new and talk. So it was impromptu. Really, we said ladies' night. Most everyone spoke English. We had one who she was struggling. Her head hurt by the end of the night. And
But
then,
was that the wine or the conversation?
Yes.
it was the language.
both.
But then the next week, the Latin neighbors, the Latin ladies said, we want our own happy hour at your apartment. There's a lot of parties in our apartment. And so that was a lesson for me, because all night I was practicing my Spanish.
Right.
And everyone else was speaking Spanish.
And did your head hurt?
Oh, my head did hurt by the end of that.
I think it's Cliff's Cosmos. That's what I'm blaming on.
Yes, she and her husband are the social directors.
We do. In Spanish, they say no bebés, más bebidas. In English, we don't have kids, we have cocktails. And so, for some of us, some of our neighbors have kids in the building and they swim on their own. I'm not responsible, but that's what's cute is I love watching your kids and spoiling them and seeing them and kind of getting them ramped up at the pool. And then, ciao,
thank you.
we go back to our apartment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about a lot of the good things about living in a building like this where it's multicultural, you have staff that helps you, you're not hearing your neighbors. But what are some of the challenges?
One of them is sometimes if you're not in the mood for a chat, but sometimes you're trying to leave the building and you see people and they're wanting to have a chat and it's like, I just want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that element of sometimes when you're maybe not feeling super social, you might get caught in a conversation or people might know a little bit more about your business than you're used to them having. But on the other hand, I mean, it is nice to have community. Sometimes I also had a dog where she was a challenge in an apartment because she wasn't great with other dogs. So navigating the elevator situation was sometimes a little bit of a challenge. I have to say, for me, I love condos. So for me, there's very few negatives.
Yeah.
Like I said, no gardening.
And with small dogs, right behind me, you can kind of see over this shoulder. I have a porch potty. So with small dogs, it's very easy. You don't have to take them outside unless you want to. Stacey, what about you?
The only downside for me is the personal one. I worry my kids and dogs make too much noise and bother other people.
Yeah, but that's a them problem, not a you problem. No.
I try to be, considerate.
Yeah.
And I have 2, 8, 10-year-old boys, and they are not quiet.
Well, and it was so funny because her 8-year-old brought me pasta last night, and I know she was expecting him to deliver the pasta and come back home.
He didn't come home. I knew Clariston had him somewhere.
So he stayed. He stayed. We were playing, we were talking, we were training the dog, and 30 minutes go by, and I knew that she wouldn't be worried because she, the little boy got caught up with the neighbors.
Yeah.
I did. One of my friends who lives out at the beach, he struggled with living in a condo because he was a man who'd always had a shed. He was someone who liked hands-on projects, and we had to explain to him why he couldn't set up like a bandsaw in the car park.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, we had to have that chat. To have that chat with him. So that was for him, I think, a negative.
Okay.
One of my, and I just thought, I thought of this earlier, but I just thought of it again. One of my absolute favorite things is when my parents are here for 6 months and we could just send the boys upstairs.
Bye-bye.
Who's staying at my mom and papa's tonight?
If you're enjoying this episode, please hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our unfiltered insider tips about life in Panama. So Tammy, what's something that you find challenging?
The whole time you've been talking, I was thinking, what's my challenge? What's my challenge? Literally, having still be working full time and my husband's mostly retired, if we have an internet blip, and it's usually a blip, the generator goes on, instantly.
Right.
So I worry for a hot minute, but then I'm back in business in minutes. That's the only thing for me that I'm in the middle of a Zoom with my client and blip. And then I'm thinking, no, I like you. I didn't hang up. And then usually
Or it freezes you on
yes. Oh my God.
face like that.
I'm mortified. Yeah, you're right. And so an internet blip has been our only disruption. Okay. Other than that, no. But it's one of the reasons we chose to live closer to the city. We felt at that time, 8 years ago, internet was more reliable the closer to the city. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's still the case. A lot of advancements
It
have
is,
happened.
but I like being close enough to the city. But I love it here. It's quiet, but close enough if we need anything.
One of the huge benefits of living in a condo, though, that you may not have in a house, if the internet does or the electricity goes out, you do have a generator that's going to kick in and you're not going to lose your internet.
Right.
And if it's a generator, some buildings operate inside the apartments and some don't. And if it's one like this building where it operates inside, you don't lose your air conditioning, you don't lose your fridge, all those things. So
our house that we had would run out of power. The
In
power
Dallas.
would go out, yes, frequently. And we had 2 refrigerators. One in the garage had meat and drinks, and in the freezer. And we lost everything one time, but it happened frequently. I swear we were on a burial ground. We didn't know it. So we finally bought a generator, but for years it was a big issue. The power would go out and we'd be
because when the generator goes on here, aside from the blip where everything kind of flickers, you don't notice it.
It's like 5 seconds, and then everything goes back on
because
again.
you can use everything just like you would normally.
Well, two, the building is large enough that different people are on different plans. So one of our neighbors, not on our floor, but she's on a different internet plan, and she texted me that hers went out. And we said, no, the building is on this different plan. So is our apartment. So hurry, she works full time, to our apartment. You can work at our dining room table or go up to the game room or go up to the pool. The internet is so strong up there. I've worked in both locations.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to work from the rooftop pool.
You're just escaping from your boys.
Mommy's working.
I have to go to work. I'll be back.
That glass of wine isn't wine.
This is apple juice. I don't know.
Thank you for drinking white for me today. That's my favorite. I know
It's a
you
nice one.
usually,
What are we drinking
you
today,
usually
Vanessa?
have
this,
red wine.
this is a Chardonnay from California.
Oh, that's my favorite. California.
So it's, oaky buttery.
Yeah.
Because these two prefer red. She prefers white. She's the guest. They're all my children. I drank them all.
I can drink pretty much anything. And a buttery Chardonnay is my favorite white. I'm not so good with the Sauv Blanc.
Me too. And we've
A good
even done
Chardonnay, and anyone who's Australian and watches Kath and Kim will get that reference.
how many wine tasting experiences have we had in the building over the years?
Oh, gosh.
You've hosted here in your place. We've had some up top where my husband was doing some wine education classes. We've been in Liz's apartment. And so you find like-minded people with the same interests. Doesn't mean you have to be best friends or you see each other every day. But if someone's doing a girls' night, a game night, we've done game night with some other couples that they're older. What's funny about Latin America or Central America, they like to start game night at 8 p.m. And I was like
everything else,
yes.
like that is almost
Like
my bedtime.
everything else.
It's like that's when I want to be on my way home, ready to be in my pajamas and in bed
I'm
by
in
9.
In bed by 9 because it gets so dark and so quiet here.
It has nothing to do with our age.
Nothing.
Nothing.
But then we're up early. I mean, we're up at 5 o'clock easily without setting an alarm.
for sure.
Just because of nature. And you hear the birds and the howler monkeys or whatever. Yeah.
How easy is it, do you think, for new people to connect? So if someone moves in tomorrow, how long is it going to take them to make friends?
When we moved to the building 8 years ago, we met neighbors. And I don't even know how. It just kind of naturally happens. You're both walking down to the beach at the same time. You're both walking your dog at the same time.
Right.
I mean, whatever the situation. But when we started Friday happy hours on the roof at the pool, it's for everyone. Those who are renting, those who are owners, those who are visiting their parents. It doesn't matter. It's a social experience this week on this Friday. Come get out of your apartment and meet your neighbor. And it's been a success for years now.
I feel like in these places you can be as social as you want or don't want.
Yeah, avoid
if you
it if
don't
it's not
want
your
to,
thing.
don't.
And I feel like really there is something we could be doing every single night of the week. I mean, we can't, but we could be invited to something every night of the week. So literally you can be as social as you want to be or as hermit-ish if you want to be.
I thought when we moved here, we would get involved with all these nonprofits, the American Embassy, all the events in the city. And we very rarely do that because we have enough here, to stay busy. Dinner parties, even, 4 people get together and just, have an afternoon or a coffee. It doesn't have to be, it can be as much or as little as you choose.
Right. So let's move quickly to cost.
Okay.
What do you think the costs are? So in our building, it's $250 a month per apartment. In your building, it's a little bit more for
the
HOA.
HOA.
For HOA.
So in Gorgona, the smaller apartments were $105 a month. I mean, it's a smaller apartment, but it's got 2 pools. It doesn't have quite the same level of amenities like the Pearl Club, but it's a great building with gym and multiple social levels and kids room and barbecue area, all those things. So I mean, it's very, very, very affordable.
And that includes, typically for most buildings, that includes everything except for electricity and then your cable and internet. So it includes water.
Yep.
If your building has gas, it'll include gas. It
Garbage
includes trash.
disposal.
So yes, there's condo living. We cook and eat each other's apartments or in our own, but we're so close to so much fine dining.
right.
And it's an easy Uber ride, $15, maybe
that,
Uber.
If
You and I both have a hair appointment in the city tomorrow, and it'll be a $15 Uber ride.
right.
You know, but if your husband drives you, it's upfront parking. It's not like you're dealing with parking lots and all that. It's easy access.
Right.
And so she and I both are going to the same place tomorrow, and we'll both be back here. And it's easy peasy.
Well planned.
Yeah, easy
Well,
peasy.
it wasn't planned.
Oh.
Our hairdresser messaged me and said, "Hey, Tammy's coming 30 minutes later if you guys want to ride together."
And I said, "No, we're playing pickleball, so you're on your own."
And it's funny because there's one person in Panama, she's Russian, and she does the most amazing hair. And especially for blondes, I would say most expat blondes go to her because she is so good.
Shout out to Natalie.
I like my lady who charges me $55 for a color cut and blow dry, who is right next to my building, and I just go, "Are you available?" And she's like, "Yep," and I just walked in.
Okay, so because we're ladies, I have to throw this in. So when we moved to Panama all those years ago, I could get a blowout for $16. I go for a blowout once a week. $16. And of course, we tip generously, and they don't expect it. So all these years later, it's gone up to $20.
And
I feel like that's a lot.
and that's you going to a shishi place.
Yes.
Most blowouts are like $5.
yeah, I was going to say, you
Well,
pay more than $10.
You can go.
Yes.
I did go to a woman's house for her blowout, for the blowout, and that was lovely. But I love the ladies, and they know me, and I know them. But do you realize I paid more? I mean, I paid $60 minimum
Yes.
in Texas.
Yes.
Minimum.
So I had the best experience my very first blowout in Panama. I was wearing a silk blouse. It was this pink blouse that I still remember. And it was pouring down rain. I went to a salon in El Cangrejo. I had a Groupon coupon or something. And it was
No shame in that game.
no shame. And I think I had paid like $5 for it because that's about what blowouts cost here. The guy spent like 20 minutes blow drying my blouse
I'm sure he did.
before he ever got to my hair. No, literally, I went and changed and put on a robe. And I mean, who does that? Who spends 20 minutes blow drying your blouse?
But they call it something different here.
They call it a blower.
a blower.
A blower.
A blower.
Blower.
When Liz first said,
Blower.
"I'm getting a blower," I'm like, "We're getting a what?"
Okay, last words. Would you recommend living in an apartment in Panama to one of your friends in the U.S.?
100%.
100%.
Absolutely.
Here's the main reason why. I have a lot of clients that have been visiting Panama, even couples, singles visiting Panama, visiting here. And one of my clients, he's a retired surgeon out of the U.S., and he said, "I really want a nice house." And I said, "Okay, but are you going to come and go? Are you going to come and go?" "Oh, yes, I'll be going back to the U.S. quite a bit, come and go, no children." And I said, "Well, you know, as a home, you need a full-time gardener because the jungle will take over. Things grow.
They grow here easily.
And because you'll want a housekeeper. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated with a house.
Right.
In a high-rise condo, lock and walk.
right.
Just go. They've got the gardening handled. You don't have to do it.
Right.
We've got such wonderful housekeepers that
Right.
Yes.
we all share, you know,
Right.
that know us and take care of things, that send us video. "Oh, it looks like your sink is leaking." We know immediately and know who to call. So I just warned him that a house will be luxury
Right.
at a very good price.
Right.
But it will be more complicated.
Right.
And if you want a more simplified life, this is what I recommend.
You know, and two things you said that are important. First of all, if someone's going to come here and not be here full time, which are about 95% of my clients, then it's better to have a condo because, like you said, you can lock it and leave it. You don't have to worry about it. It takes away so much complexity to be in a condo. Second of all, as we're all getting older, it's who not us.
talking to?
It's just easier. It's
just
easier to be in a condo where you don't have to worry about so many things.
For me, the first thing that I guess I really was like, I think it made my mom actually feel better, is as a single female living here
Yes,
is
the
the security.
security, yes.
No one's walking in off the street to get anywhere near where I live.
Right.
There's always someone who has an eye out, who knows what's going on. For me, there is that feeling of security of being in a condo building here that for me, would not swap that for a house.
Especially if you got bit by a sloth.
Yeah, that was my mum, not me. But
I
yeah.
know, but you know,
I can
who
see
to
why your
go
mom was
to.
concerned.
Yeah,
No, I'm
she's a
teasing
safety
you.
risk. She's a safety risk.
But there have been times, and depending on the city you live, back in the U.S., I have felt so much safer here.
I'm 100% in agreement
Yeah.
with you.
And we left Austin, Texas.
Right.
We are very familiar with Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. My husband's from Corpus. We just feel safer here.
Right.
And truly just welcomed. So I'll give an example. Some people will say, well, what about Hawaii? What about Costa Rica? What about, I don't know, where you feel healthy, happy, and safe, that's where you should be.
Right. For sure. And again, so many people think that they're going to be safer in the United States in their hometown. And it's shocking to feel like, oh, you're going to be safer here in Panama than you would ever be in your hometown. So there you have it, our unfiltered take on what it's really like to live in an apartment in Panama. If you found this conversation helpful, please make sure to like this episode, as it helps the algorithm bring this content to more people just like you. And remember, when it comes to moving abroad, what you don't know can cost you. Until next time, we'll be bringing you the real stories of Panama. Us and my dog. Cheers! Salute! Salute! Cheers, Tiffany!